When a group of hikers stumbled upon this tomb during one of their mountain climbs, they couldn't believe their luck. The entrance to the tomb was first hidden behind a large encircled building stone, and the hikers had to make an effort to roll that stone away so they could enter the tomb. But when they entered the tomb, their excitement turned into fear. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The tomb was dark and damp, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. In the flickering light of their torches, the hikers, Emma, her husband Chris, and their friend Tommy, could clearly see that this was built by humans. The passage seemed to go on forever, and they had to use their headlamps to navigate through the darkness. Chris and Tommy's eyes gleamed with curiosity, fixated on the locked door that lay ahead. Emma, on the other hand, was hesitant and afraid, pleading to turn back. Emma stood in between, torn between her own fears and the group's determination to unveil the mystery behind the door. With a sense of adventure and curiosity, Emma finally gave in and agreed to continue exploring. Armed with a heavy stone, Tommy tried his luck at unlocking the mysterious door. Tommy used all his strength and hit the lock with the stone as hard as he could. He had hoped it would break after the first hit, but it didn't. He did not give up and continued kicking the lock a few more times. Tommy took a few deep breaths as he gathered the courage for his next task. He stood before the door, and he landed a strong kick on the door. The door creaked open slowly, making a loud, horrible, screeching sound. It must not have been opened in many, many years. The trio held their breath and realized that they could not go back now. As they stepped into the ancient passage, the air grew damp and musty. The walls were lined with mysterious symbols and strange hieroglyphics. Chris and Tommy's determination didn't waver, despite Emma's protest to turn back. Soon enough, Emma's scream pierced through the eerie silence of the ancient passage, and the trio stumbled upon something that took their breath away. They all turned pale when they realized what they were looking at. They were now standing in an open space surrounded by skeletons. Everywhere they looked, they saw heaps of bones. As they looked around the space, they noticed something about the skeletons. It seemed as if they were all arranged in a big circle, with one skeleton in the middle of it. As they approached the skeleton in the middle, they noticed something strange about it. They saw something shiny in its hands. It was holding a mysterious box. Upon taking a closer look, they saw that the box was completely covered with some kind of inscription. Chris and Tommy were discussing what would be the easiest way to take the box out of the skeleton's grasp when they heard a faint rustling noise coming from the darkness. They all froze in place. Tommy and Chris quickly shone their lights around the chamber, and they were relieved to see that it has just been a few leaves, blown around by the wind. Emma pleaded with them to leave the box behind and just go home, but Chris and Tommy were determined to uncover the secrets inside it. In the end, Emma agreed to stay, but she wasn't going to help them. She didn't want to touch any skeleton or even stand close to it. Emma waited outside the skeleton circle while Chris and Tommy cautiously approached the skeleton in the middle again. Both of them were scared, but their curiosity was much bigger than their fear. Both guys disliked being inside the circle, so they decided to make it quick. Tommy's hands trembled as he reached for the box, feeling a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Chris carefully pulled apart the skeleton's fingers, and with one final tug, Tommy wrenched the box free from the skeleton's grasp, the sound of cracking bone echoing through the ancient chamber. As the three of them looked at the inscriptions on the box, they came to the conclusion that it must be a foreign, possibly even ancient, language. They took turns holding the box, inspecting it closely and looking for a way to open it. It seemed impossible. Emma got caught up in it all and forgot about her fear for a second. She was determined to find a way to open it. Upon taking a closer look, Emma discovered that the box was indeed a puzzle, and that the inscriptions on the box were patterns and symbols, waiting to be solved. Her eyes sparkled with determination and curiosity as she traced the signs with her fingers, imagining what she would find inside. She took a deep breath and accepted the challenge. Each twist and turn of the symbols held a clue, a piece of the puzzle waiting to be deciphered. She could feel that she had almost solved it. And then, as she twisted the last piece into place, she held her breath. Suddenly, she heard a soft click from inside the box. She did it! She carefully lifted the lid. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked inside. "Come on, Emma. What's inside it? Show us," Chris and Tommy said. But Emma stayed silent. She was considering her options. She decided to just show them. Inside the box was a golden, shiny key with intricate details. They began searching the chamber with the skeleton circle for anything that could be opened with the key. After an hour, frustration set in until Chris shouted, "Guys, over here! I found something!" He had pushed a stone that revealed a secret passage. Bright light shone through as the door opened. Inside was a room filled with treasures, statues, and strange artifacts. As they explored, the sound of whispering froze them in their tracks. A loud clanging echoed through the chamber, but then abruptly stopped. Fear overtook them. Chris suddenly ran back toward the passageway. "Chris, wait!" they yelled, chasing after him. Then they heard his scream. When they reached him, they found the metal door locked. Desperation mounted as they tried everything to open it, but nothing worked. Emma realized the key might be their only hope. With tears in her eyes, she tried it in the lock. To their relief, it fit. Just as she was about to turn it, the whispers returned. "Do it, Emma, now!" Chris shouted. She unlocked the door and they bolted toward the tomb entrance. Breathless and shaken, they emerged into daylight, their minds racing. Who had locked the door? What were those voices? Exhausted and frightened, they debated their next move. Forget everything or call the police. But would anyone believe their story? After giving it some thought, they knew what they had to do. The three of them agreed that they should definitely tell the police what had happened. But instead of calling them, they decided to go right to the station. When they arrived at the police station, nobody believed them, which wasn't a big surprise. Emma was determined. She did not go through all that horror just to be sent home. She was stubborn and finally was able to convince two of the officers to go back to the tomb with them. Emma could see that the officers were annoyed, but she knew that they would believe them as soon as they got to the entrance of the tomb. When the five of them arrived at the entrance, the officers gasped in disbelief. They immediately called for backup, and moments later, the place was swarming with police cars, officers, and even archaeologists. They started an investigation, and Chris, Emma, and Tommy were finally able to go home. A couple of days later, the police knocked on Emma and Chris's door. An officer had come by to share some important news with them. As it turns out, they had discovered something very special. The tomb belonged to a lost ancient civilization. This was incredible news, and the three friends were shocked. However, they still had one question. They still hadn't figured out what was up with those voices and other sounds they had heard inside the tomb. The officer laughed and told them that the investigators had found an explanation for that as well. There actually had been other people inside the tomb with them, and they had been arrested. Emma and Chris laughed when they found out why. They were grave robbers. A group of thieves had heard rumors about a hidden treasure somewhere in the area, and they had found the entrance to the tomb. However, they never managed to find the hidden room, but Chris did. That is also why the robbers had locked the door on them, so they wouldn't escape with the treasure. The grave robbers were arrested, and Chris, Emma, and Tommy became heroes on the news. Thanks to them, the investigators were able to uncover more about this mysterious and long-forgotten civilization. Years later, when the investigation was officially closed, the tomb even became a museum where people could see the beautiful artifacts of the past with their own eyes. Chris, Emma, and Tommy continued going on hikes. Even though their experience in the tomb had been terrifying at the time, it had strengthened their bond and changed their life for the better. Their friendship had become even stronger, and when Chris and Emma had their first child, they even asked Tommy to be their daughter's godfather. Tell us what you think about this story and share it with your friends. It might inspire them and brighten their day.